The coffee cup should have shattered when it hit the tile. It didn't. It spun, wobbled, and settled upright, like it refused to break. That was the first thing that went wrong that morning. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. Not the video. The cup. The stubborn, stupid cup. If it had broken, maybe I would have snapped. Maybe I would have screamed. Thrown the phone. Burned the house. Something. But no. I just stood there, barefoot, shaking, staring at that cup like it owed me an explanation. Behind me, the video kept looping. Muffled audio. Her voice. Laughter. A man's voice I didn't recognize. Then silence. Then again. Click. Replay. Click. Replay. I didn't press it. It just replayed itself. The file had no name. Just a timestamp. 2:42 a.m. I was asleep in that room at 2:42 a.m. She was awake, recording. She wasn't supposed to be home that night. She told me she was flying to Denver for a leadership retreat. I even helped her pack. I ironed her blouse. I wrote a little note and slipped it in her suitcase like a damn sitcom husband. But there she was, in the video, not in Denver. She was on our couch. Same candles still burning in the background. Wearing my hoodie. And she was with someone else. But that's not what broke me. What broke me was what she said after. The last 10 seconds of the video. She didn't know the camera was still recording. She looked at him, that smug, tired-looking guy, and said, "He'll never find out. He's too soft. That's why it's so easy." Easy. She used that word. Easy. I walked out the door 5 minutes later. No plan. No wallet. No note. Just keys and rage. The air outside felt like glass, sharp, cold, unreal. I didn't vanish all at once. It took days. But I knew from that moment, I was done. 1 year later, today, she found me. Somehow. After all this time. After I buried my old life like a corpse in the woods. And now she's standing in front of me. Crying. Saying she's sorry. Holding something in her hand I never thought I'd see again. And the worst part? A small, pathetic part of me still loves her. She didn't knock. She just stood there in the rain. Her face was soaked. Not just from the weather. Her mascara had surrendered, leaving these gray streaks down her cheeks like war paint from a battle she lost long before she arrived. Her hair was longer now. Different color. She looked like someone trying to disguise themselves as their old self. I didn't speak. I just stared at what was in her hand. A tiny, wrinkled blue elephant. Fabric worn thin. Stitched trunk half detached. My childhood toy. The one I hadn't seen in over 20 years. The one I buried with my mom. "You left it," she whispered, holding it out like a peace offering. "In the crawl space. Behind the water heater." I didn't take it. I couldn't. That elephant wasn't just a toy. It was the last thing my mom gave me before she died. Callista had no idea it existed. I never showed it to her. I never even talked about it. I kept it hidden, on purpose. And yet here it was, dangling from her trembling hand, like some kind of ghost she dragged out of the past to win her way back into my life. "How did you find me?" I asked. My voice cracked. My throat was dry from not using it all day. She blinked at me, the rain slipping off her chin like she didn't even feel it. "It doesn't matter. I needed to see you." "No. How?" I stepped forward, out of the doorway, closer than I should have. I needed to see if she would lie. Again. She hesitated, then finally said it. "I hired someone." Of course she did. Of course she paid someone to track me down, to pull apart the new life I'd stitched together with broken threads and cheap staples. It didn't surprise me. But what did surprise me was what she said next. "I didn't come to beg," she said. "I came to tell you something. Then I'll leave, forever." I didn't invite her in, but I didn't stop her either. She stepped inside, her shoes soaked through. She looked around the tiny one-room cabin like it was a museum of punishment. No photos, no decor, just a mattress, a desk, a single chair. "You really did it," she said, almost to herself. "You disappeared." I didn't reply. I sat down at the edge of the bed and watched her, trying to figure out if this was guilt or manipulation. Or both. With her, it was always both. Then she pulled out a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket and placed it on the desk beside me. It was a DNA test. I stared at it. My stomach turned. And then she whispered the words I never expected to hear. "He's not his. He's yours. He's not his. He's yours." That sentence didn't land right away. It hovered in the air like smoke, twisting and stinging slowly. I looked at her, at Callista, and I swear, in that moment, she wasn't crying anymore. Her face had changed. There was a flicker of relief, or maybe just the satisfaction of detonating a truth she'd been hiding for too long. I didn't touch the paper at first. The DNA test sat there like a loaded weapon, and I was afraid of what would happen if I picked it up. My hands were shaking too much anyway. So I just looked at her and said the only thing that came to mind. I didn't even know there was a child. She bit her lip, nodded once, and sat down, not across from me, but right there on the floor, knees up to her chest, arms wrapped around them like she was trying to become smaller than the room would allow. I was pregnant when you left, she said. I didn't know until 3 weeks later. I was going to tell you, but you disappeared. I tried everything. Your brother, your coworkers, your email. You didn't just leave me. Howard, you erased yourself. There it was again. That strange inversion of guilt. Like my vanishing act had canceled out her betrayal. Like the cheating, the lies, the man in our house. None of that mattered anymore, because I walked away too far, too completely. I finally picked up the paper. Read the names. The percentages. The cold, scientific language that confirmed it without any drama. Probability of paternity, 99. 9,987%. You named him? I asked, still staring at the page. Elias. Elias. The name hit harder than I expected. No trendy spelling. No last name as first name gimmick. Just Elias. A quiet, ancient name. The kind I might have picked. He's 9 months old, she continued. Looks like you. Sleeps like you. Hates green beans. I wanted to hate her in that moment. I needed to. But the more she spoke, the harder it became to hold on to that rage like I had for the last year. Because now there was this third person, this tiny, innocent version of me out there somewhere. And suddenly my pain felt selfish. Suddenly, I wasn't just the man who'd been betrayed. I was the man who'd left his child without even knowing he existed. I don't want your forgiveness, she said. I don't even expect you to come back. But I wasn't going to lie to him about who his father was. And I thought maybe if I found you and showed you proof, it might matter. Even a little. She stood up slowly, walked toward the door, and placed the little stuffed elephant on the table beside my bed, the same one I thought had been lost forever. A ghost of my past, returned alongside one I hadn't known I created. And then she turned to leave. Wait, I said. She stopped, hand on the doorknob. You said he's mine. But what about him? The man you... I couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just said, he's dead. Then she opened the door and walked back into the rain. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor beside the table, the DNA paper still in one hand, the stuffed elephant in the other. I couldn't stop staring at either. Somehow they'd both become proof of something I didn't ask for. A confirmation of a life I walked away from, and a history I thought I buried. Callista hadn't stayed after dropping that final word. She hadn't even looked back. He's dead. Just like that. Like she was telling me the weather. Dead. The word echoed in my skull louder than her knock ever had. I wanted to scream. Not because I felt grief for that man. I didn't. Not even close. But because the whole foundation of my escape had been built on distance from him. From them. And now one half of that equation was gone. And not gone in the way I was. Gone in a way that doesn't come back. It took me until sunrise to really move. The first thing I did was make coffee, though I never drank it. The second thing I did was pull out my old prepaid flip phone, the one I swore I'd never use again, and turned it on. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing. But it was connected. And that alone felt dangerous. I didn't call Callista. I didn't even know if her number was still the same. Instead, I walked outside, down to the edge of the lake, and stared at my own reflection until it started to blur. My beard had grown in thicker. My eyes looked older. My mouth always seemed like it was mid-apology. I didn't recognize this version of myself, and maybe that was the point. When I finally came back inside, I found a note slipped under the door. I hadn't even heard her return. My stomach dropped as I unfolded it. You deserve to know the truth. Not just about Elias. About everything. Meet me at the place you used to go when you needed quiet. Noon. Come alone. There was no signature. She didn't need one. I knew her handwriting. I knew it like I knew my own name. The place I used to go when I needed quiet was an abandoned rail station outside the city, tucked between two hills and a collapsed trestle bridge. I hadn't thought about it in years. The fact that she remembered it sent a cold line down my spine. She'd always been good at details. That was what made her so dangerous. Callista didn't forget. She stored information like a predator memorizing a map of every hiding place its prey might use. I got in my truck around 10:45. The roads were damp, empty, and wound through pines that leaned like they were listening. I played no music. I kept the windows cracked, letting in the early October air. It smelled like wet wood and iron. I pulled up to the station just after noon. The building was still crumbling, still dressed in vines and rusted signage. No one else was around. Just Callista, sitting on the edge of a broken bench, holding a folder in her lap and a cigarette in her hand she hadn't lit. When I stepped out, she didn't smile. She looked exhausted. Not performatively. Not to gain pity. Just genuinely worn, like someone who had carried too many truths alone for too long. "I need you to listen to me before you say anything," she said. "Because once I start, I can't stop halfway." I nodded, but something in my chest was already tightening. My instincts were screaming, but I ignored them. I sat down on the bench opposite her and waited. She opened the folder and pulled out a photo. I recognized it instantly. It was of her. And him. The man I saw on the video. The one she told me was dead. But this time, his face was bruised. And behind them, almost invisible at first glance, was me. In the background. A reflection in a window. "I told you he's dead," she said quietly. "But I didn't tell you how." She looked me straight in the eyes, voice trembling for the first time. "Howard, he didn't die by accident." "I didn't tell you how," she repeated. "Because I didn't think you'd believe me. Or worse, I thought you would." The photo in her hand shook slightly as she placed it on the bench between us. It was glossy but aged. Printed, not digital. The bruises on his face were unmistakable. And in the background, through the warped reflection in the window, I saw my own face. Unaware. A ghost in the corner of my own life. I stared at the photo, so long my eyes blurred, my brain refusing to process what I was actually seeing. I was there. Not during the assault. Not during anything violent. But I had crossed paths with them. In public. Without knowing. Without even seeing her. Callista must have seen me. Taken the photo. Captured the moment like some twisted insurance policy. "He was following me," she said quietly. "For weeks. After the affair ended." That snapped my attention back to her. My fingers clenched on my knees. "You ended it?" She nodded. "The night before you left. I was going to tell you everything. I swear to God, Howard. I was going to confess. I realized what I had done. Who I had become. I ended it with him that night. He didn't take it well. I wanted to believe her. God, some sick part of me needed to believe her. But that belief came with a steep price. Accepting that things were even worse than I imagined." Callista looked up at the ruined train station, her eyes scanning the broken timbers above as if the words she needed were hidden in the rafters. "He started showing up at my work. My apartment. Calling from random numbers. Sending things in the mail. I didn't go to the police because I was ashamed. And because I thought maybe I deserved it. For what I did to you." She reached into the folder and pulled out a second photo. This one made my breath catch. It was a picture of the man's car, windows smashed in, blood on the driver's side door, and what looked like a tire iron lying on the pavement. "It wasn't me," she said, her voice suddenly sharper, like a wire pulled tight. "But it was my fault." She looked at me then, with something between fear and confession bubbling behind her eyes. "I didn't kill him, but someone did. And it happened the night I told him I was pregnant." Silence dropped between us like a curtain. I couldn't speak. My thoughts were tangled, sliding between horror, disbelief, and a strange, rising sense of suspicion. Because if she didn't kill him, then who did? "You have enemies you don't even know about, Howard," she said suddenly. And that was the first time I saw a flicker of something new in her. Not guilt, not grief, but fear. "What are you talking about?" I finally asked, barely recognizing my own voice. She leaned closer. The rain was starting to fall again, pattering against the broken shingles above us. Her breath came out like smoke. "I think someone followed you after you left. I think someone knew what I did. And I think whoever killed him wasn't done with just one of us." She slid the final document from the folder. An envelope. My name was on it. My new name, the one I used after I disappeared. A name I had never spoken aloud in front of anyone. "I got this in the mail last week," she said. "No return address. Just this inside." I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single Polaroid. Of me. Sleeping. In this cabin. Taken through the window. I stared at the Polaroid for a long time, and I don't think I blinked once. The image had that sickly washed-out coloring unique to old film, the kind that makes everything look like it's been touched by decay. But there I was, unmistakably me, curled up on the edge of the mattress, one arm hanging off the side, mouth slightly open. Vulnerable, unaware, and unmistakably alone. Or at least, I thought I was. But the angle, that's what made my skin crawl. It was taken from a vantage point outside the cabin, the back window, facing the tree line. That window is always shut, always locked, covered by a heavy curtain I never touch. I keep it that way because the woods behind the cabin go deep and no one comes through there. Not hikers, not locals, just foxes and wind and shadows. And yet, the photo existed, which meant someone had been close, closer than anyone ever should have been, watching me while I slept. I looked up at Callista, and for once, I couldn't read her. There was no performative sorrow, no carefully constructed expressions of pain, just quiet, stillness, and behind her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. A fracture, a kind of helplessness I never thought she was capable of feeling. "This isn't just about us anymore," she said finally, barely above a whisper. It hasn't been for a long time. I wanted to shout at her. I wanted to demand answers, real ones, with timelines and names and confessions. But the truth was, I had let myself be invisible for so long that I had no map left. No sense of what was real or orchestrated. I had cut ties so cleanly that I no longer knew who was holding the blade at the other end. "Why did you really come here, Callista?" I asked, my voice heavier than I meant it to be. She didn't respond immediately. She stood up, wiped her palms on her coat, and started pacing. 3 steps left, 3 steps right. Then she stopped and looked directly at me. "I didn't come here to get you back. I came here because I think they're going to come after Elias next." The world dropped out from under me. "What the hell are you talking about? Who are they?" My voice cracked, rage and confusion mixing in my chest like oil on fire. She reached into her coat one last time and pulled out a folded letter. "I wasn't going to show you this. I thought it was just another scare tactic, maybe from some nutcase who followed the trial or the press. But now, with the photo, I think it's more." I opened the letter. No return address. No signature. Just one line, printed in all caps on a torn piece of notebook paper. "Your son will pay for the blood you left behind." That's when everything shifted. The death of her lover, the stalking, the timing, it all started to align in this warped, terrifying way. If someone believed I had something to do with that man's death, if someone thought Elias was connected, "I'm going to need you to tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning. And you're not going to leave anything out this time." She nodded slowly, lips pressed into a flat line, and sat down again. "I didn't just end the affair, Howard. I ended a deal. I didn't understand. Not yet. But I would. And when I finally did, when I saw the full picture, I would wish I'd stayed hidden. I would wish that letter had never been delivered. Because the truth wasn't just dangerous. It was designed to destroy everything I still loved." Callista didn't speak right away. I could tell she was weighing every word before letting it pass. Her fingers twisted around the frayed sleeve of her coat like a nervous metronome, and her breathing had changed, shallow, clipped. Whatever she was about to tell me, it wasn't going to be the kind of truth that offers clarity or comfort. It was the kind that makes you question whether you were ever safe to begin with. "This isn't easy to explain," she said finally, "because it doesn't start with you. Or him. Or even Elias." She looked out at the tree line, her eyes scanning the stillness like she expected something to move, to blink back at her. Then she turned to me and said something that chilled me in a way I can't explain. "Do you remember when my sister went missing?" It hit me like a trap door opening under my chest. Of course I remembered. It was back when Callista and I were just dating. Her younger sister, Fiona, 23, full of wild ambition and always 2 steps away from burning out, had vanished after attending a party upstate. It had become a media circus for a few weeks. There were rumors of a fight with her boyfriend, sightings that led nowhere, and then nothing. No body, no answers, just an empty seat at holidays and an unclaimed voicemail inbox. Callista never talked about it again after that year, and I never pushed. "She didn't disappear," Callista said. "She ran. From the same man I ended up seeing." My breath caught. "You're saying, wait, that guy? The one from the affair?" She nodded. "But it wasn't really an affair, not at first. I didn't just fall for someone. I was approached." Those 2 words carried more weight than I expected. Approached. I repeated, slower now. What does that mean? She pulled a crumpled napkin from her coat pocket. It looked ancient, stained, and nearly torn in half. But there was a name written on it. Block letters, black ink, faded but still legible. Just one word. Marlowe. He introduced himself the night after Fiona's disappearance made the local news, she said. He said he was a private investigator. Said he had leads. Evidence. I was desperate and young, and I didn't ask the right questions. All I knew was, he seemed to know things that hadn't been made public. Personal things. Things only Fiona would have told someone. I stared at the name again. Marlowe. It didn't sound real. It sounded like something out of a pulp novel. He offered a trade. Callista continued. Said if I gave him access to certain accounts at my job, nothing criminal, just private data, nothing I'd be blamed for, he'd give me Fiona's last known location. Proof that she was alive. And you believed him, I said, almost whispering. I wanted to believe him, she said. And that's worse. Because he gave me just enough to keep me hooked. A voicemail. A photo. And then, silence. He vanished. Until 6 years later. That's when I saw him again. Only he wasn't calling himself Marlowe anymore. My stomach dropped. She looked up, and her voice cracked for the first time since she arrived. He had a new name, a new face. Facial hair. A scar over his temple. But it was him, Howard. And this time, he wasn't offering help. He was asking for favors. And when I refused, he made it clear that he never actually lost track of me. Or Fiona. I didn't want to ask. I didn't want to hear the next part. But I did. So that man you were with. He was Marlowe, she said. Or whatever his real name is. He knew about you. About our finances. Our routines. He knew when you'd be home. When you wouldn't. He was inside our life before I ever touched him. And I think the affair was never the point. Control was. I couldn't speak. I felt like I was hearing someone describe the plot of someone else's life. A conspiracy that only exists in the shadows of online forums and late-night coffee shop rants. And you said someone killed him. I managed. You think it was revenge? Someone protecting you? Callista paused. No. I think it was someone cleaning up. That stopped me cold. Marlowe was dangerous, but he wasn't alone. He was part of something bigger. I don't know if it's a group, or a syndicate, or some twisted network of information brokers. But he wasn't freelance. And when he got sloppy, when he crossed a line with me, and started leaving a trail, I think whoever he worked for decided he was a liability. And now they think you know too much, I said. She nodded once. And they know Elias is his son. No, I said, shaking my head. He's mine. That's what the test said. Howard, she interrupted softly. Marlowe didn't care about paternity. He only cared about leverage. I leaned back, staring at the rafters of the old rail station, listening to the wind creep through the broken slats like whispers through teeth. There was a weight pressing on my chest that I couldn't push off. Why didn't you go to the police? I asked, already knowing the answer. Because people like Marlowe don't exist on paper. There's no file, no prints, no social, no real identity. Just whispers. The kind that get you followed. The kind that make your child a target. A silence fell between us, so loud it hurt. Then she said one more thing before we left that ruined building behind. The night he died, Howard, I saw someone else with him. Someone holding a white lighter. He wasn't part of our story until now. But I've seen that lighter again. I didn't ask where. Because I already knew. It was the same lighter I found behind the cabin last week, half buried in the mud. We left the train station without another word. There was nothing else to say. Not yet. Callista sat in the passenger's seat, quiet. Her head leaned against the glass like she was trying to disappear into the woods rushing by. I didn't ask questions. I just drove. The Polaroid, the letter, the lighter, all of it sat locked in the glove box between us. Tangible proof that some invisible hand had been scripting our lives in ink we weren't meant to see. But not anymore. When we got back to the cabin, the sun was setting behind the trees. The light poured through the blinds like honey, soft and golden. I remember thinking it was the first beautiful thing I'd seen in a long time. Callista walked around the room slowly, her fingers trailing the edge of the windowsill. She looked smaller now, like she'd exhaled something heavy and couldn't quite fill her lungs again. I watched her with a strange calmness. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a shift. A surrender. I know you don't trust me, she said. And you probably never will. But I need you to know. I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated myself. There was no performance in her voice. No tears. No drama. Just raw, cracked truth. And for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel the need to run. I walked over to the kitchen drawer, pulled it open, and placed the white lighter on the counter. I thought I was being watched, I said. I thought I was being paranoid. Turns out, I was just catching up to the truth too late. Callista stepped beside me and stared at the lighter. We can't stop them, she said. But we can make it not worth their time. How? We disappear again, she said. But this time, not alone. Not afraid. And not forever. We stayed in the cabin for 3 more days. No phones. No lights after dark. No unnecessary movement. And then one morning, just before sunrise, we left. I don't remember crossing the state line. I don't remember falling asleep in the passenger seat while Callista drove. But I remember waking up to the sound of waves. The smell of salt air. A new place. A small town where no one knew our names. And that's where I met him. Elias. He had her eyes, but my hands, small, curious fingers always reaching for something he couldn't quite hold. He was cautious around me at first, shy, unsure of the man who had appeared from the shadows of his mother's past. But children are better at forgiveness than adults. By the 3rd day, he was asleep on my chest. By the 5th, he was calling me Howie. And by the end of the month, I knew I could never leave him again. The world didn't end. No one followed us. The letters stopped. The cameras disappeared. Maybe the people behind all of it moved on to easier targets. Maybe they never existed the way we thought they did. But none of that matters now. I wake up each morning to the sound of Elias laughing through the window. I work at a bookstore by the harbor. Callista paints. She's learning to be someone new. So am I. And every so often, when I look at her across the dinner table, or hear our son humming to himself as he falls asleep, I remember that night, the Polaroid, the fear, the weight of what almost happened. And I feel something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Not perfect peace, but real peace. Earned peace. The kind you find only after losing everything and choosing not to stay lost.